Good evening, everybody. The January 24th, 2023 Hibbing Public Utilities Commission meeting is called to order. Item number 2 will be adds or deletes. Do we have any? Not, we'll move on to item number 3, approve the minutes of the December 20th, 2022 Commission meeting.
So moved.
Support. We've got a motion by Commissioner Bayless, support by Commissioner Andrea, to approve the minutes of the December 20th meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Approved. Next item will be the citizens forum, which we don't have anybody up. Move on to number 5, consent agenda. Item 5A, approve invoices greater than $10,000, approve the bills and ACH transfers dated December 17th, 2022 to January 20th, 2023. Approve the payroll paid and overtime report for the December 29th, 2022 and January 12th, 2023 pay dates. Item 5C, approve request for contribution from Angel Fund in the amount of $500 for the curling fundraiser. Item 5D, approve performance review and salary adjustment for Penny Rachusky, Safety and Facilities Manager. Item 5E, approve performance and review and salary adjustments for Paul Plumbum. Item 5F, accept notice of retirement from Steve Damaris, Hibbing Renewable Energy Center First Engineer. Item 5G, approve resolution to sell the surplus equipment. What will be the wish of the commission?
I'll motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, support. We have a motion by Commissioner Bayless, support by Commissioner Babich to approve the consent agenda items 5A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item 6A, approve the official newspaper and public posting site. Mr.
Yeah,
Peterson?
if I could, Chair Hart, thank you very much, Commissioners. This is the first meeting of the new year, and it's appropriate to set out and set our annual policies. In the past, our organizational meeting has been in April at times, but I think a lot of this is just regular business for the course of the year. It makes sense to just approve with the beginning of a new year. Since this is the first meeting of 2023, I then have now 3 recommendations for just annual fiscal business for the Commission. Item 6A is the newspaper, which is the same as last year's Wasabi Tribune. Official depositories were listed in the agenda packet, which is where we hold the funds of the ratepayers of the utility, which have certain collateral requirements under Minnesota statute. And then C is the official calendar for the Commission, both the working session agendas, which would be the first Tuesday of the month, second Tuesday of the month, and then the regular meeting would be the 4th Tuesday of the month in most cases. And we've made a couple exceptions for holidays and elections and things like that. So those would be items 6A through C.
Thank you, Mr. Peason. I'll make a motion to approve the official newspaper and posting site as presented. Is there support? Support. Motion by Chair Hart, support by Commissioner Andrea to approve the official newspaper and public posting site as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next up will be item number 6B, approve official depositories, which would be Security State Bank, American Bank, Wells Fargo Investment Services, U.S. Bank, the National Bank of Commerce, and Express Bill Pay. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Chair Hart. These are the official depositories we've had last year, and I recommend continuing them again for this year. The Commission also should be aware that the majority of our operating funds are kept at Security State Bank here in Hibbing.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. I'll make a motion to approve the depositories as presented. Is there support? We have a motion by Chair Hart, support by Commissioner Andrea to approve the official depositories as presented. Any further discussion?
Can I just bring one thing, Chair? I just saw in here on the agenda, it had maybe I'm looking at the old agenda, but it had Wells Fargo as one of them, but it's not on this list here.
Yeah, we did remove it because we don't have any transaction at Wells Fargo
Okay.
and it's been a while since we've had that. So we've taken them off the official list. If there's a need to add them back on, we'll bring that up. Commissioner.
Just for clarification there.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 6C, approve the meeting dates for the 2023 year.
Thank you, Chair Hart. As mentioned in the intro, before you commissioners is the list of both working session dates for the year as well as regular business meetings to be the fourth Tuesday of the month in most cases.
Okay. What will be the wish of the commission?
Motion to approve the dates.
Support? We have a motion by Commissioner Bayless, support by Commissioner Babbage to approve the meeting dates for the 2023 year. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Approve, opposed? Motion carried. Move on to financials and risk management. Item 7A, approve the interim financial statements. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Chair Hart. I'd like to introduce Bethany Ryers from Baker Tilly to join the Zoom call and present the interim financials. And as I mentioned in my cover letter, this is just the first draft of the financials for the calendar year 2022. We are going through and reconciling all of the accounts, and they already are reconciled for cash as of the year end, but with the chart of accounts, we're just going through and making sure everything's in the right spots for where they are. So these will be represented in February once additional review has been completed on them. But we thought it was important to bring it back to state before you and where we are with cash reconciliations as of 12/31/2022. Bethany.
Awesome. Thank you, Luke. So what you have in front of you is the draft financial statements. As Luke mentioned, it is in the new chart of accounts, so it does roll up a little differently than how you've seen it in the past. The majority of the balance sheet kind of looks exactly the same, but when you look at the change in net position, you will see the grouping of expenses has changed slightly. So you'll see operations and maintenance by utility, separate from depreciation expense by utility, and then a separate general and administrative category. One other thing I kind of wanted to just point out to you, when you look at the bottom of the statement of net position, you see transfers in and out. That amount, that total really should be net and rolling up with the general and administrative costs. You'll notice it's only for the first 3 months. That was when some allocations were performed to move general and administrative costs between utilities, but we kind of grouped them all in the same bucket under just general and administrative. So you really should be looking at the total of those, and then it is more comparable from month to month and between this year and last year. As Luke mentioned, there are quite a few reconciliations and reviews that we're doing related specifically to the balance sheet, and then also a depreciation expense as well. So just to point out a few of them, last meeting you mentioned prepaid expenses, and we did spend a little bit of time to review what's included in prepaid. There will be an adjustment that you see in the next set of financial statements. The majority of that balance will end up being expensed, but we're just doing a little bit of due diligence because there are a few line items in there that I just kind of want to double check what they relate to before we make any specific adjustments. We'll also be making adjustments related to unbilled revenue, accounts payable, ensuring the inventory line items agree with the detailed listing, as well as some specific GASB related accruals that tend to normally occur with your annual audit. So the specific entries related to pension, other post-employment benefits, those tend to occur a little bit later because we have to wait for some actuarial information and detailed studies to be able to book those journal entries. So once that information is available, we'll be able to record them. It likely will be closer to March or April. In addition, between now and your annual audit, we will also have a new governmental accounting standard to implement, and that is GASB 87 related to leases. We're currently in the process of evaluating some contracts to determine if they scope into this new standard. I imagine some will, and then we'll be doing an evaluation to determine the scope and materiality of those contracts and how it will impact your financial statements. I tend to drone on and on about GASB 87 because I'm so used to talking about it. So if you do have any detailed questions about that implementation or the new accounting standard, please don't hesitate to ask, and I'll be sure to go into as much detail as you like. There are two other areas that we're kind of working on, and which I believe in your packet you have some memos and action items related to. The first relates to depreciation rates. We did a detailed review of the assets that you have in your sub-ledger for fixed assets. Oh,
Bethany, could I just interrupt just for a
Yeah,
second? Commissioners,
of course.
just if you refer to the supplemental packet, this is where the memos Bethany is referring to are for the depreciation memo. And it would be on page 28.
7B, correct?
Yeah, that's correct, 7B.
perfect. Thank you, Luke. So we did a review of the asset types that are included in your detailed subledger, and we evaluated the depreciation lives that are in place for those assets and compared them to industry average. So we picked a few IOU utilities that have publicly available depreciation rates. And for the water utility, we compared it to comparable Wisconsin utility. The Public Service Commission of Wisconsin actually regulates the depreciation rates for the entire state. So they do very detailed useful life studies pretty regularly to ensure that everybody has the correct rate. So we feel those are pretty good ones to go off of. And what we found was, some of the useful lives were comparable to these utilities in the industry. Some were quite a bit higher than what we typically see in the industry. And then we had a few that were just inconsistent. So what our plan is to do a little bit deeper review to see if there's any reason why you would need a higher depreciation rate than what the industry shows, and to be more consistent with the depreciation lives for each bucket of type of assets. From there, we can adjust depreciation. Depreciation expense is an estimate, so it's always something to be evaluated prospectively, so it wouldn't impact the prior year at all. But going forward, you'd have more consistent and reliable depreciation rates. That memo kind of details in more detail our exact evaluation, as well as our short-term recommendations, which we're hoping to put into place for 2022, and then long-term recommendations for just general review of your fixed asset ledger to ensure that you have good continuing property records going forward.
And if I could, Bethany, interject in that, and I just see a lot of the useful lives that are shorter result in the ratepayers being charged more than they need to for the assets we have in place, which at the end of the day, having a more rigorous, structured approach to all of our fixed assets will ensure more stability for rates and help us implement a more solid rate outlook for the future.
Yeah, and you can see that in tables 3 and table 4, specifically on page 3 and 4 of that memo related to depreciation. The second item that we wanted to, or that we're reviewing and we want to come to you for approval about, is the use of regulatory accounting. It's included in another memo in your packet. Regulatory accounting is approved by Governmental Accounting Standards Board. It is in GASB statement number 62. It is something that is very widely used in the utility industry. So the first page of that memo kind of goes through the requirements of being able to use regulatory accounting, and that includes, the organization's rates must be approved by a governing body, which in this case would be yourself. You're the ones who approve the rates, and you'd be the ones to approve the use of regulatory accounting and how the costs are incorporated into customer rates. And ultimately, the utilities rates are designed to recover the cost of serving customers and will ultimately be paid by the ratepayers. So Hibbing does meet all the criteria for the use of regulatory accounting, as do most of the publicly owned utilities. So to just walk through an example of regulatory accounting so that you can kind of see the benefits. One of the normal ways that we see it being used is for large expenses that just don't happen regularly. So if you have a large tree trimming project that you only do every 10 or 15 years, you would spend a lot of money, $100,000, $200,000 over a couple year period, but you get the benefit of that over a much larger period. And in your rates, typically that cost is normalized over the period that it provides benefits. So what GASB 62 for regulatory accounting would do is it would take those costs, it would defer them on your balance sheet, and then you would amortize it over the life that those costs provide value to the utilities, which is when generally those costs are included in your rate. So you're properly matching your revenues with your expenses. It makes rates look a lot smoother. It provides stable operating income for the utility. And it's a good way to ensure that you'll also meet your bond coverage requirements as well, because you won't have any one year with this huge expense. Another way utilities use regulatory accounting is through a rate stabilization fund. And I believe there is an example of that included in the memo, as well as a sample resolution. What that means is in years where the utility is doing very well, you can defer some of those revenues onto your balance sheet and save some of the cash as well, so that you have a restricted cash related to this rate stabilization fund. Then when times are a little bit lean or you have a bit of a rough year, then you can use those funds instead of going and increasing rates. So it kind of also provides you with kind of a stable operations and kind of lets you squirrel away some funds for a bad year. Now, I know we all know the economy that we're having right now is not ideal. I have a lot of my clients who have a rate stabilization fund, and they're very grateful that they have it right now because they can use what they have in the rate stabilization fund currently without having to worry about increasing rates to cover the shortfall. Any questions so far on that, or anything else, Luke, that you want me to make sure to discuss in detail?
I think we do have one question from a commissioner.
I'm just out of curiosity, so what are we currently doing? Like, are we doing some other accounting standard with another acronym, or are we just doing our own thing?
Bethany, I don't know if you heard the question, but Commissioner Babish
Yep.
asked us, how would you categorize the standards that Hibbing Public Utilities has been following up until this point where we've implemented the FERC chart of accounts? And the regulatory
Hibbing follows the governmental accounting standards, and you will be continuing to follow the governmental accounting standards. There really is no difference. What this would be is a change from one approved governmental accounting standard to another. So whenever a utility will implement regulatory accounting, they typically will restate their financial statements just for the implementation of a new accounting standard, and then use that going forward. It is all approved by GASB. You aren't going to another set of books or another type of accounting. It's officially the Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement number 62. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
So we are following GASB, but this, based on my review of the best performing utilities that are publicly owned, they all follow the FERC, more of a structured regulatory utility approach, which GASB 62, as Bethany has alluded to, is designed to do. There's certainly nothing wrong with the way we've been doing things. There's better ways and there's worse ways to set up the utility for the future that I think our ratepayers can benefit from. Things like the PGA, and I think you'll see a resolution coming forward. It sets up just a little bit more of a stricter standard for processes involving the PGA or any of these type of deferred accounts, where the total cost and the total revenues will be booked in a disciplined process, while the actual amortization of that over time will be according to a more disciplined approach. So even though they're both GASB, there's a better GASB, in our opinion.
Yeah, thank you.
That's the only question in the room that I've seen, Bethany.
Perfect.
Another question? No other questions? No. Do we have a motion?
Well, yes, and then if, in the packet, Commissioners, there are a couple of resolutions we have drafted based on the recommendation of the GASB principles. We have Resolution 5.23, which is for a more structured approach on the PGA, and this will be found in your supplemental packet, page 33. Resolution 5-23 for the PGA and PPA account. Resolution 6-23 for stabilization of a rate, to establish a rate stabilization fund. Resolution 7-23, which is to establish a defer certain vegetation management expenses for future cost recovery. And this will be finalized pending approval of the budget in February of 2022, which we will discuss at the working session next month. But this sets up the structure in place that we would follow for that, with the numbers to be filled in upon approval of the budget. Resolution 08-23 implements the policy of deferred revenues for customer contributions in aid of construction. This is an example of, we built a new very large service for a particular customer, and that customer had to reimburse the utility for the cost of that. We would recognize the revenue associated with the reimbursement of the cost along with the expense, which would be spread out over the life of the asset. So said as a whole, and then also Resolution 09-23, which is adopting the comparable rate, depreciation rate for the utility assets that we have. As a whole, this sets up a package for commencing the regulatory accounting and more of a smoothing effect of these major cost items that have been, up until this point, still handled in HPU's accounting system, but in a much more, I would say, ratepayer unfriendly way, because they've, by and large, we've been expensing things immediately rather than recognizing them as assets over time. So to answer your question in short, Commissioner, there are a series of resolutions that I would recommend.
Okay, the first resolution will be the power purchase resolution 05-23. Is that correct, Mr. Peterson?
That is correct.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve that resolution.
Okay. Support. Okay. So we have a motion by Commissioner Bayless, support by Commissioner Andrea, to approve the power purchase adjustment resolution as presented. Any discussion? I guess the only thing I'm gonna add here is, you know, when is it fair to add power purchase adjustments to our customers? And, you know, we got new financials, we looked at what utilities are doing well and what aren't. And does a utility that's doing well justify a power purchase adjustment? I guess that'd be a question I would pose to you, Mr. Peterson.
Yeah. Do you want me to answer that right now, or?
You don't have to answer
Okay.
that right now.
Well, what I would say is that, you know, we all know, especially with the polar vortex, we've relied on power purchase adjustments, and we have been billing slight variances on a power purchase adjustment. What this does is make a rigorous process, whereas every month, any excess or under collections would get booked into a fund that would get dealt with at a time that we would reset rates. So it allows management flexibility within a certain bandwidth, but then at the time of setting new rates, which we'll also talk about as from the budget of like what is our process, it would have an accumulated amount of over-under that the commission would evaluate as a whole for what to do with. And there's a philosophical question: does a utility that's doing well have a PPA? And I think the answer to that question is PPAs are structures that allow the pass-through for costs that are directly related to providing service in a timing period when utilities also can't anticipate all costs that they're exceeding. And so if a utility is perfect at predicting the future and perfect at buying gas in according to its budget, that there should never be the need for a PPA or a PGA. But we all know that we live in the real world, and things happen. And I think our customers in particular are very aware of what's happened with the polar vortex or Hurricane Erie that the rest of the country is still dealing with, and we dealt with properly back in 2021. To, I think, answer a little bit more on this is this helps us be more structured on that, so our customers have the predictability of what they can expect in rates.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next will be Resolution 06-23 to establish a rate stabilization fund. What will be the wish of the commission?
I'll make the motion to approve it.
And I'll support that. We have a motion by Commissioner Bayless, support by Chairman Hart to establish a rate stabilization fund. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion approved. Next item will be Resolution 07-23. Be it resolved by the Hibbing Public Utilities in its regular commission meeting of January 24, 2023, that it hereby approves and adopts a policy to defer certain vegetation management costs for future rate recovery from customers. I would make a motion to adopt this resolution. Support?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion by Chair
Commissioner
Hart,
Andrea can
support
get it.
by Commissioner Andrea to adopt Resolution 07-23. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, Resolution 08-23, be it resolved by the Hibbing Public Utilities in its regular commission meeting of January 24, 2023, that it hereby approves and adopts a policy to defer revenues from customer contributions in aid of construction. What will be the wish of the commission?
Make a motion.
Second. We got a motion by Commissioner Andrea, support by Commissioner Babich to approve Resolution 08-23. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Resolution 09-23, be it resolved by the Hibbing Public Utilities in its regular commission meeting of January 24, 2023. It reviewed a communication from Bethany Ryers and Russ Hissam discussing a review of Hibbing Public Utilities fixed assets and depreciation lives. Hibbing Public Utilities hereby adopts a comparable standard depreciation rate set forth in this memo and commits itself to undertaking a reconciliation of the fixed asset register organized by FERC and the NRRUC account. What would be the wish of the commission?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
Support. We have a motion by Commissioner Bayless, support by Commissioner Babbage to approve Resolution 09-23. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. I think that was it for resolution.
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Next on the agenda, we'll move on to item 7C, which is calling for public bid 2023-12 pipe fitter services for summer outages. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Chair Hart. In item 7C, Commissioners, you'll see a scope of work for the summer project list for the power plant, the Renewable Energy Center, for pipe fitting bids, and we need commission approval to go out for bids for this. We expect the amount to exceed the amount that we can approve without commission action, and we expect it possibly to require a public bidding. So that's why we're going out for it.
Motion to approve.
Yes. We have a motion by Commissioner Bayless, support by Commissioner Babbage to approve calling for public bid 2023-12 pipe fitter services for the summer outages. Any further discussion?
Chair, I just got one quick thing. Do we clean up the bid process at all so we don't have any questions about this? Do we have a way to make it so it's not as confusing as it's been in the past?
So for the bids and quotes, for the, if I could, Chair, the short answer is yes for the standard bids and quotes. Because this is pipe fitting services and there's a history of a lot of competition by two local pipe fitting companies, I would expect that because this competition is still real, I would expect some of our regular contractors to still be questioning our processes as we go through this. So we are doing all we can at the PUC to make sure that the expectations are clear. Our recommendation to the commission will be a clear one based upon review of past conceptions and misconceptions of our processes. A lot of it is managing expectations with both contractors here within the city. Can I answer? The short answer is yes, it will be better, but it's also a very competitive pipe fitting market in the city.
Fair enough.
Any other discussion? No. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next item will be 7D. Approve calling for public bid 2023-13, the permanent pit scale. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Commissioners, if you recall, we are leasing a temporary scale from Prairie Scales in front of the power plant. Having a scale on site has been instrumental into driving the value out of our wood deliveries because no truck has been the same weight. Over time, it's important that each truck is scaled appropriately so we know exactly what's in it and how much it weighs, and so we can pay accordingly. Also, having a scale on site allows us to have access to county timber sales land, which has a more thorough documentation process for the state of Minnesota, so we can access that timber. Long story short, it gives us more opportunities for supply, i.e. lower costs for our customers. Our temporary variance expires this spring, and this would be the process to look at bids for a permanent replacement of that scale so we can maintain our certification status with the state of Minnesota. This will involve some concrete work underneath the current scaling location, as well as the necessary licensing and certification of weights and measures of all the foundational material. There will be a little bit of engineering design and a lot of concrete work as part of it.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. I'll make a motion to call for public bid 2023-13 permanent scale replacement. Under support. Motion by Chair Hart, support by Commissioner Andrea, to call for public bid 2023-13 scale replacement. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item 7E, approved purchase of Hibbing Renewable Energy Center fuel in the amount of $152,820 for Midwest Energy Resources Company. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Commissioners, as you know, we had a really cold month, a couple days in December, that allowed the power plant to have its most profitable December on record due to high prices. Having additional fuel flexibility throughout winter allows us to ensure that we can respond to market conditions. And this is an amount of 2,000 tons of coal, Paul, is that right? If you could just talk about how much coal we're buying here, or recommended to buy.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. This contract that we have right now is for 2,000 tons of coal at roughly $76 a ton, so the total does come to about $152,000. This is, like Luke had said, is to keep our inventory up so that we can have that as a backup fuel source when gas prices do raise like they did last December. Also, we have RADA testings coming in March, which we all also use this fuel supply for. So we anticipate it, barring we don't get a polar vortex every other week, that it would last till March.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
What will be the wish of the commission?
Motion to approve.
Support. Okay, we have motion by Commissioner Bayless, support by Commissioner Andrea, to approve purchasing the coal from Midwest Energy Resources in the amount of $152,820. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 7F. Approve the purchase order 2209037 in the amount of $61,550 to be paid to SemSource for 2022 maintenance and stack sampling. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Chair Hart. As part of our air permit requirements, we are required to have continuous emissions monitors, which are computers that read the amount of pollution coming out of our stacks at the power plant. It's a highly regulated field, and the equipment that we have for the analyzers and the recorders on our stacks all are proprietary equipment of SemSource. So this qualifies as a sole source bid. SemSource is also very good to work with. The amount we are requesting for the annual, which includes the quarterly maintenance as well as the DRF1 reporting, which we file quarterly with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, totals $61,550 for all of 2023, reflecting a slight increase from the previous year.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Will be the wish of the commission.
I'll make a motion.
Got a motion by Commissioner Babbage, support by Commissioner Andrea, to approve purchase order 2209037 in the amount of $61,550 to be paid to SemSource for the 2022 maintenance and stack sampling. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Move on to item 7G, approve annual maintenance agreement with Novaspec in the amount of $67,890.53. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Ahead of you, Commissioners, and item 7G is the annual maintenance agreement, and this will be in the supplemental packet with Novaspec. And if you recall, Novaspec has the proprietary license for Fisher control valves and related control equipment, and Delta V, which is our plant operating system. The annual maintenance agreement cost is $67,890.53. There's a number of payment options, but that is the annual cost. With that, we get a number of proprietary backups of our critical system infrastructure, as well as support on the large projects we're working on, which, if you recall from the capital budget discussion we've had in December, it includes control upgrades to each of the 3 turbines that we have, including the Woodward governor controls on the 505s on each turbine this year. So we have quite a hefty amount of work to do. The cost did go up about just under $4,000 from last year, and considering the increase in costs everywhere, as well as the increased work at Hibbing Renewable Energy Center, I feel that that cost increase is acceptable for this year. And we also have no other option. So, throw that in there too, but.
Okay.
Okay.
Guess I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll support it. We have a motion by Commissioner Bayless, support by Chair Hart, to approve the annual maintenance agreement with Novaspec. Any further discussion? I guess I got one question. Is covering all of our properties include the water plant?
It is.
Okay, yeah. All right, so, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Approved. Motion carried. So, move on to item 7G, or 7H. Approved purchase order 220-90449, the amount of $29,400 to be paid to Boiler Inspection Services for services rendered. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Chair Hart. This is Boiler Inspection Services. Paul, do you mind talking about this one? We deferred this. It was supposed to be next week, and we kicked it back just because it's getting cold.
Good evening again. So this is for next week. We were gonna have Boiler Inspection Services come in and do a metallurgical analysis on our superheater tubes to see what type of repairs need to be done. However, it has come to our attention that we have some cold weather rolling in, and at the same time, we're gonna have to take down some of our boilers and turbines, and we decided to not do it that way. We are gonna look at doing this a little bit later in the summer. And we will hopefully roll this into a complete boiler inspection package and for our annual on the boilers. So we'll do that at the same time and only have one mobilization cost. They already had tickets purchased when we called them. They were not upset about deferring it or anything like that. So this, I guess, probably wouldn't have to be approved like this. We can wait on this. They aren't coming next week. Probably won't happen until summer sometime. I would expect then that amount would be a different amount as well. Thank you.
So am I hearing, if I could, Chair, should we just pull it then? Or should we approve this with the expectation that this is the base and then there'll be a change order for the additional work?
We could approve this just as a placeholder so that they know that they are still gonna be coming at some point and we just have to call them. And there will probably be a change, but we'll keep in mind that we've already approved it up to this amount. And any change would be for a complete boiler inspection, which would meet our annual requirement on those boilers then. That would be just on boilers 1 and 2. Depending on what we're situated like when that comes around, we could possibly get another boiler in at the same time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So might as well approve it as a placeholder, huh?
Right,
Okay, I'll make that motion.
okay, support. Motion by Commissioner Bayless, support by Commissioner Andrea, to approve the purchase order to Inspection Services Company in the amount of $29,400. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Move on to item 7I. Approve a request for qualifications for construction risk manager. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Customers watching and ratepayers out in the audience, you might recall that we're doing a lot of work in the water treatment plants. Before us is a request for qualification for a construction manager, which we would intend to turn into a construction manager at risk. that would be involved with finalizing our design and making the final recommendations before we go out to project bid. This is just a request for qualifications, and we are hoping to go out for the qualifications this month here, and by the end of February, an approval sometime in March of who the construction manager at risk would be.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. We're not gonna hear from,
No, there's nothing from
okay,
Bolton.
that's fine.
I told him to save the mileage.
So I'll make the motion to approve calling request for qualification for construction risk manager for a water plant project with the note that on page 242 of 253, task 1, project management and cost management, that it be clarified that the construction manager at risk under number 3 will develop and implement a strategy for issuing public bid packages that align with the proposed sequence of construction. It just doesn't define public bid in it. Is there support?
I'll support that.
Okay, we have a motion by Chair Hart, support by Commissioner Bayless to approve the request for qualifications for the construction risk manager. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next item will be 7J. Receive an update of the GIS project and approve contract for time and materials not to exceed $72,000 of Bismarck mapping. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Chair Hart. If I could ask Mr. Tony Kraska to also approach the podium if the chair will entertain that. So if you recall, Commissioners, we hired Bismarck Mapping in November of 2021 to start the work on an asset inventory for Hibbing Public Utilities electric distribution system first, knowing that this would be a multi-year effort to not just do the electric distribution system, but to build HPU's utility infrastructure and a GIS database to be the start of everything. And Tony Kraska here has worked with the line crew to develop both the data dictionary, the way all the computer data is organized, and put it on a system. If you look in your supplements on page 81, I've added a couple screenshots of this. Tony, I actually have the system set up, and I thought it might be helpful to just kind of go over a little bit of what we have in here. And you know, Tony and I have been discussing recently the scope of the contract and the individual schedules of work and the individual cost estimates. But as I stated in my memo on page 81, the contract we intend as a time and materials not to exceed $72,000 with a billing rate of $100 an hour. And Tony's been a great partner in teaching our crews on how to do this. So, Tony, if I could hand it over to you to maybe give an overview, and then if I could share my screen over Zoom so the commissioners and those at home will watch. Well, we'll give that a try. I'm still in, and so I will share that. I'll share my screen. Okay, Tony, go on. Go ahead.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. My name's Tony Kraska. I'm the president of Bismarck Map Company. Just wanted to kind of come in and show you. I've got a handout here. May I approach and hand this out?
Approach the dais. Council Borland, is that okay?
That works.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
So, just a little bit about what we did last year, and then what we want to go after for the next year. So when I came into this, I've worked on lots of different utilities in the past. This is my first electrical distribution network that I worked on, and so I had a bit to learn. And so what we did was we first pulled all the data together. Everything that you had existing already. So I pulled together the drawing files that the AutoCAD file that Virginia had, and then the books that she made of the whole system, of the electrical distribution system. And then what I did then is I took the pole inventory that was done back in 2018,
Yeah.
and I converted that spreadsheet to a GIS shapefile, so I had all the points that they inventoried for each pole, and so I got an idea of where the system all was. Then what we did was I toured the power plant, and then we toured the distribution line system, went through all the vaults, all the junction boxes, pad transformers, substations, and so on. And then from the field staff and supply personnel, I got all the components that make up each component off of, everything that you guys order. So if it's wire, or if it's transformers, or it's, fuses, you name it, they gave me a list of everything that you guys have. And so what we did then through numerous iterations with staff, we developed this data dictionary that pretty much, it encompasses every component in your electrical distribution system. And then we broke it down then into poles, we broke it down into meters, we broke it down into transformers, ground-based transformer. And then we went into lights, street lights, we went into traffic lights, and we broke the whole thing out from there. And then numerous iterations that staff got to take a look at it, and this is all really driven by the linemen, and they really were the drivers on this in a lot of ways. And so once we settled in on the whole system that we wanted to collect, just from an inventory perspective, then what we did then is I created the geodatabase and then created the Survey 123 application that they would use then out in the field to collect this information. Then I went into the process of obtaining the GPS units from Trimble. It came out of Frontier Precision out in the St. Cloud. And they came up with a rep, and she showed the gentleman how to utilize the unit. And we went off and purchased 2 of them through Hibbing Public Utilities. And then what I did then was I loaded the Survey 123 app onto the GPS units, and then I showed the linemen, all the components, how to do it. And they picked it up really fast. I mean, it was crazy. Don't get me wrong, it's super easy to use, and it's all pull down menus. They don't have to type stuff in unless they want to. And then, or if there's an area that they can do it in. And so they would go through that, open up the windows, and then once they're all done surveying a pole through all of its tiers and all the components, then what they do then is hit submit, and then that information then through the pad, which has a cellular connection to it, it then shoots it to the geodatabase on my servers. And then what we did after that is we built a mapping application that Luke showed you there. And that allows Luke and the field crew to see, the progress, and also has a QA/QC component then to make sure that, that the right, right wire type and so on and so forth. We also added, for poles that didn't have a barcode, we added barcodes to those, new barcodes to those poles. And then for transformers, we started barcoding all the transformers. And so each one of them then is, they can be easily scanned. So in the future, when they come up to a pole, all they have to do is you don't need a GPS unit anymore. Once that pole's been inventoried, all they gotta do is snap that barcode, and all the information for that pole or component comes right up on their screen, and then they can do automatic, they can update, the inventory on that pole real time. So once we got that up and running then, I provided the technical support to the field staff, and again, we created the web mapping application for progress, and then what we did is then, from the previous pole inventory, we created large format field maps so that crews out there can have a set of these big, 2 by 3 foot maps, and they can then check off what they've done, and then make notations where, information is needed, or extra information or modifications. And then what we did then after that then is from field staff notation on those large format maps on a different set, what we did is they drew out where the vegetation control areas are for tree trimming, and then I digitized all that out, and then I put that all on 11 by 17 inch maps, and then they used that then in their bid process, I believe. And so moving forward to last fall, then we started moving into the idea of Hibbing Public Utilities having their own GIS servers, having their own own system, enterprise system that they can manage down the road. And I looked at Involta. I visited Involta back in last fall. They gave me the grand tour. I was impressed by it. It's indescript facility out by Minnesota Power. It looks like a bunker, but a very elaborate security, very elaborate 24/7 generators and power supplies, and it's a very nice. And they've got multiple ISP providers coming in there, so it's nice. So then what I did is I started working with Esri and Dell, and we started specking out the servers, the GIS server and the portal server, and those servers were delivered not too long ago, and now we're ready to get that thing implemented.
Yep. So as I mentioned in my cover letter, commissioners, what I really liked about working with Tony is he's helping us grow to basically have our own GIS system that we're going to have the skill sets to manage. We're still going to need technical support over a number of years to do that. But for instance, we're buying our own servers to put into the locked up facility where our GIS data would be. It's not going to be Tony's stuff, it's ours. We're going to pay Tony at an hourly rate, I'd suggest. He's going to work closely with the crews and Stephanie to get scopes established for particular projects that he's working on. But he's basically our on-call staff. I would almost think you're part of the family, Tony, to like it or not. I want to get into some of the data because this is the coolest part, I think, of it, is to show what the system is showing. And what are we percent complete? How many polls do we have total?
The last time I counted, we were at 566, probably around 600.
600 polls of how many thousand?
5,000.
5,000. So we're about 13% or so.
Somewhere, well, probably north of 30, around 15%.
Completely mapped with all the details, and all the data is already there for them. But like this is, Ron, can you put my screen back up? Thank you. So like this is this poll ID right in the corner of 37th and First Avenue. This is all the attributes that were collected from them, the barcode ID, the date we created that, so that was mapped right before Christmas. It's 30 feet high. It's a number 2 aluminum tri-conch wire, and then there's some photos down here. All these other fields exist. There's a 3-phase transformer on there, yada, 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 go down. And then, so here's a picture of the pole, and then here's a picture of the pole. So different, and so poles with transformers have the nameplate on the transformer on there too, so we have a real live map of all of our equipment categorized in there. So it's really good to see this start to populate. So what did I say? I want the 50% or 100% complete by February?
Yep.
How are we doing on that?
I don't know.
Okay.
We're
Not-
getting closer.
Getting closer, it's not 100%, but we're working with staff to make sure that the line crews have the right schedule and expectation to implement that. So, along with this comes all the phase tracking, which we've also been investing in some equipment to help us identify the phasing, which is really important for coordinating fuses and phasing all the way back to the power plant. So a lot of items moving on, but I'm really glad with the progress.
So what % complete are we on our electrical end of it?
Last I checked, we were 13% complete of the polls. And so it has been, all the work put in to get the database set up. It's not like we're buying a pre-script database. We kind of designed all the structure in-house. But now the line crew has the path fully put out ahead of them, and I've been working with staff to make sure that we have the expectations and the planning and the staff designed around getting this done. I haven't had a clear answer on when we can expect to be 100% complete, because I would like to be there right now. Right, Tony?
Yes, sir.
Although we took the time to do it right and have the buy-in and the education of the crews up front. And so if you recall back to 2021 in November, when we started this, we did know it was going to be a long haul. My goals are still to have it done this year. And I'm told that that's never going to happen. I don't believe it. We're going to make it happen, while we're also expanding onto water.
Yeah, I think we're gonna look at right away, while they're doing the meter replacements, that we're gonna get the lead line inventory as well. Because that's got a timeline to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you guys have, we purchase servers, are they on site or are they off-site where, that's where you maintain them?
They are currently in Tony's garage.
No, they're in my office right now.
Behind the
They're-
Corvette?
I'm fully insured.
Yeah, the servers that we bought will be going up to the Involta server farm in the data center. So,
And that's the building you were talking about?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they have their own disaster recovery, probably on their
We
side?
will have redundancy there within it, and then
Well, I'll have take-home backups too.
Yep.
They're gonna leave that, I mean, I don't trust anything, so we're gonna make sure that there's, at least, I like to do, at least take-home is gonna be a minimum of every 2 weeks. And the other thing too is we'll be able to back up because of ghost copies on the servers as well, so everything will be well taken care of. We're gonna do cloud backups as well. So you'll have the cloud backups and then you'll have take-home.
Thank you.
so as part of this, we're also going to be leasing a server cabinet in Involta. But this is HPU Direct, not Tony. Leasing space at Involta and making sure we have all the data protocols to do that. So as of total, right now, the costs, all of the other stuff have been smaller items. This requires commission approval just because, it could get up to $72,000 for this year, and that's why we wanted to bring it forward for approval. So we're also, on our data requirements, it's still not very, I know we have a requirement on Minnesota Data Privacy Act, but just the governmental data that's on a third-party server, I'm kind of working with Andy to make sure or our servers in another location, Andy and I are kind of working on that, make sure we got the right compliance stuff around where our data goes, because it's all protected or public, depending on what we're doing. So,
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What do the wish of the commission?
Make a motion to approve it.
Support? A motion by Commissioner Bayless, support by Commissioner Babich to approve the contract with Bismarck Mapping in the amount of $72,000. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Move on to policy and governance. Item 8A, approve hiring a plant mechanic and posting for 2 additional plant mechanic positions. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Commissioners, as you recall, we had an opportunity for a plant mechanic that we posted in the fall. We've made a recommendation, and since have been talking with a number of candidates, the initial recommendation we've withdrawn and went back to the pool. And so with that, I'm presenting you now with Zeb Graves. Zeb is no stranger to the Hibbing Public Utilities and has, in this latest round, rose to the top of a pretty robust pool of candidates that we looked at. And I don't know, Dan or Paul, you want to come up and just introduce Zeb?
So good evening. We did have a group of candidates of around 8 people that we had selected. We narrowed it down to 3 that we had interviewed. And right now, Zeb stood out above all of them with his aptitude. We did actually bring in our current plant mechanics, which is something different that we haven't done before. Typically, it's just been an interview process, but this was basically a aptitude test. Had to go through different pipings, some drawings, some basic mechanical questions, for the most part to see if his resume could back him up, or he could back up his resume, sorry. And as a majority vote, we all took a vote, and Zeb came out to the top of the list, so he was our prime candidate for this job.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
I'll make the motion to approve the hiring of Zeb Graves and appreciate the changes in the process too for hiring. It's a pretty different way of doing things. I like it.
Yep. Yes, I agree. I'll support that motion. And approve for posting for the,
Yeah, we can do that too, yeah, and posting the 2 additional, unless you wanted to talk about that first.
Yeah, maybe we should, just for cleanliness, you want to take the 2 votes, and it should be approved together, but I just wanted to talk about the staffing levels too. Go ahead and approve it. Then
okay, motion by Commissioner Bayless, support by Chairman Hart to approve the hiring of Zeb Graves for the plant mechanic position. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All's in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carried. Mr. Peterson?
Oh, thank you. On the second part of that is just the posting for 2 new mechanic positions. As we looked at overall staffing levels in the power plant, and while the overall power plant staffing level is not complete in terms of our final recommendation, we do know that we need to do more preventative maintenance. And ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. You know, you've heard that adage all the time. The maintenance department is the front end of all of the work. And so in addition to the hiring of Zeb, we do recommend bringing up additional 2 mechanics for the purposes of training. We saw, I mean, we can't get any applicants for our controller position, but we do have a lot of people locally with aptitude that we can take in and train to the specific requirements of our plant. And we see this as a great way to boost the productivity and improve efficiency of the whole power plant. So, wanted that to be said.
Okay.
So, Andy, do we have to do anything different to make this a separate motion then? Because we have to approve the 2. I don't know if we just wrote it in with the last one or not.
I think you just make it a separate motion now, since he kind of wanted to fragment it off, so.
Sure. All right, I'll make the motion to approve 2 additional plant mechanic position postings.
Okay.
Second that.
We got a motion by Commissioner Bayless, support by Commissioner Babich to approve posting for 2 additional plant mechanics. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all's in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Congratulations, Zeb.
Welcome aboard.
Looking forward to you getting there, you're working hard. Do we have any old or new business? needs to be discussed?
I will just mention for good measure, you guys are all no stranger to Aaron Brown, who gave the keynote address at our centennial. Well, I just thought I'd share the Minnesota Municipal Utility Association legislative conference is going on in St. Paul today and tomorrow, and I'm gonna head down there after the meeting here with all the new bills coming in to make a whole brave new world. But part of the kickoff for the legislative conference was to have Aaron Brown be the keynote speaker at MMUA's legislative conference. So Victor Power is the star of the show of the 2023 Minnesota Municipal Conference. So just wanted to thank Aaron and the community for supporting the utility at the Centennial and that spirit of public power and the community supporting itself, which this town had more than 100 years ago, is now being shared again in St. Paul, right as all of the municipal managers from around the state are descending upon the Capitol to make sure the opinions about current issues are shared with legislators. So just thought I'd share that with the commission and members of the public who are so inclined. So glad to have Aaron as part of our extended team spreading the good word.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Any other business?
No.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, yeah.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bayless, support by Commissioner Andrea to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everybody.